My name is Rita Johnson-Greene, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Alliance for Regenerative Medicine, ARM. At ARM, I'm responsible for both our two revenue streams, membership as well as events, and people and culture, finance, and our Asia Pac expansion initiative, which has been probably the most time-consuming thing that I've been working on over the past 2 years, but also the most exciting. We consistently hear at ARM that the cell and gene therapy, the entire industry is in crisis. And our key messaging is that the cell and gene therapy sector is, basically following a nonlinear um, pattern, very, very similar to monoclonal antibodies, right? When you think about monoclonal antibodies, it took about 16 years from the launch of the first one until the first achieved blockbuster status. And then it actually took about 38 years from the launch of the first monoclonal antibody to reach the $250 billion industry that it is now in 2024, right? And so if you think about cell and gene, like, yes, there's going to be some bumps, there's going to be some setbacks, but at the end of the day, we have, two blockbuster products in the market right now in the cell and gene therapy sector, right? That's Yescarta as well as Zolgensma. And if you look at the Wall Street consensus data, it's predicted that by the end of this year, by the end of 2025, we'll have four in the market, adding Elevidys as well as Carvecti. And then by 2030, so 5 years from now, we'll have about 10 plus blockbusters that are in the cell and gene therapy sector. So, I mean, again, just if we can kind of accept the nonlinear path that cell and gene, as well as monoclonal antibodies, which we know is, undoubtedly a $250 billion industry, if we can accept that that's the path, I think that maybe, we won't be so discouraged by, some of the ebbs and flows of the industry. I think I'm really encouraged by some of the financing that we're seeing currently. Just recently, Atsena raised over $150 million this month, and so we're hoping to see that that type of raise continue and see that momentum continue. And then, to that end, ARM has recently started a capital markets task and finish group. We started it toward the end of 2024, and then it's continuing through 2025. And it's really all about gathering data and reasons to believe in the cell and gene therapy sector. And so, looking at the number of large biopharma institutions that are invested in cell and gene and actively working in cell and gene, which is about 75% of them, because the narrative has been, oh, no large pharma is investing in cell and gene, and that's just not the case. And so really pulling data that we're then giving to our membership so that when they're going to fundraise, they actually have true and accurate data about the cell and gene therapy sector that they can share with their investors, that really are reasons to believe, and not necessarily some of the narrative or the myths, as I'll call them, that may or may not be accurate. And so that's something that we'll be, consistently refreshing throughout the quarters and giving it to our members so that they can be an echo chamber for this positive data, hopefully creating a positive momentum within the cell and gene therapy sector. It was really an honor to receive that award from Reuters. And I think the thing that honestly means the most to me is that a peer had to recognize you. And so that means that a fellow woman, in the industry felt that I was worthy of being recognized. And that means the world to me, and then of course that, the governing body of the selection committee also agreed with this peer. I think from an advice perspective, some of the things that I would tell up and coming women within the market or within the pharmaceutical industry, one would be self-confidence. My second would be risk taking. And then a third would be community. And so from a self-confidence perspective, I mean, I think it's so easy for women, especially in a male dominated field, to have imposter syndrome and to feel as though, they don't belong in the room, or maybe I shouldn't say anything when I'm in the room. And so I think really having a sense of self, and whether that self comes from, like, for me, it's, my religion and my faith in Jesus Christ, right? I believe that, I'm a child of God and I'm supposed to be wherever God puts me. But whatever it is for other people, making sure that you have that sense of self-worth, that wherever you are and whatever space you're in, you're bringing your best self. Because if you're not, then already you're at a disadvantage. Number two, and along the same lines, is the risk taking. You're going to take risks when you're your best self and when you're your most confident. And I think that the only way to learn and to flourish in this industry is to take risks. And some things you'll learn from failing, some things you'll learn from a success, right? But if you're not taking those risks and if you're staying and playing safe, then likely, you're not learning as much as you possibly could, and you're certainly not as competitive as the people who are taking risks. So again, having that confidence to take the risks, I think, is most important. And then lastly is community, and it's not just networking for the sake of networking, right? It's building a community of people that you trust so that when you need to call upon them for strength, for contacts, for whatever type of introduction they may need, all like runs the gamut. I think it's so important to just maintain those relationships over time, so that you can call upon like your tribe when you need it. And so those are my three, kind of key advice that I feel like I live by and consistently remind myself of, as I'm not navigating the cell and gene therapy sector. So my name is Rita Johnson-Greene, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Alliance for Regenerative Medicine, ARM. At ARM, I'm responsible for both our two revenue streams, membership as well as events, and people and culture, finance, and our Asia Pac expansion initiative, which has been probably the most time-consuming thing that I've been working on over the past 2 years, but also the most exciting. One thing that we'll definitely be discussing is how policy in the EU as well as the US, will affect how patients have access to cell and gene therapies. ARM has kind of three key focus areas. One being, our removing barriers to access for patients is really important to us. And then also investing in the biotech research that's being done. I mean, you think about the US, NIH funding, et cetera. And then the last is, really paying attention to the regulatory framework and just making sure that, as decisions are made from a regulatory perspective, that ARM has a seat at the table and is ensuring that, the regulatory process is as efficient as possible for the cell and gene therapy sector.